Do pandemics require governments to lock down their citizens in order to get control of all aspects of the health crisis? Or is there another way in which similar outcomes can be achieved? There are two schools of thought on this. The first, and the one being implemented by the New Zealand government, is that the health risks must be paramount and the people protected from that at all costs. The second is that the risks be fully explained, and then let the people decide what measures that they must take to protect themselves. This is the method used in Sweden and in some of the states of the US. Now the protection of its citizens is the primary function of any government. But is the New Zealand government doing that in all relevant aspects? And these must include the economy as well as the health. In New Zealand, the government supposedly went hard and early in its lockdown decisions. I would dispute the early bit, and that the borders were not closed as early as they could have been. Yes, they did go hard, in that just about everybody was told to stay home and not to go to work. This was for a period of 4 weeks, or 2 cycles of the incubation period of the virus. The reasoning behind this decision was computer modelling, since proven to be totally inaccurate, that showed that a significant number of Kiwis, many thousands, would die because of the virus, and the hospital system would be overwhelmed. So the call was, let's flatten the curve. This has now been superseded with an elimination of the virus strategy, and this extension has never been fully explained. How is it possible to eliminate the virus in New Zealand when it is not being eliminated elsewhere in the world? Yes, it would be theoretically possible in New Zealand by closing the borders completely, but we could never live like that. No, I am not recommending using the Swedish method of herd immunity, as such a move would mean that all previous steps taken by the government would be totally wasted, including the many billions of dollars borrowed and spent so far. However, these lockdowns every time there is a spike in the numbers cannot be justified either. Lockdowns are causing more harm than good. I recently heard of a suicide caused by the collapse of a business directly related to the closed border. How many more have there been? And what other deaths have occurred because of the suspension of cancer and other health checks? We will never know. So what should the New Zealand government do now? First and foremost, they must start to trust the people and not rule by fear. The government is there to serve the people and not to people serve the government. So let the whole country go back to level 1 of the lockdown strategy and get the economy back to as close as possible to normal. That will mean that the borders will need to be kept under proper control, but with entrants being allowed in, subject to a pre-flight test, an arrival test, and a third test after 12 days, all in isolation, either self or controlled. If all are negative, then there is effectively no risk to New Zealand. This method can be used for all entrants, sports teams, seasonal workers, specialist workers, and of course students. How this is paid for can be determined on individual cases. Kiwis returning home, paid for by the state, but America's Cup teams and the like, paid for by the entrants themselves. Then do all the necessary advertising to instruct the people about physical distancing, hygiene, mask wearing, etc. And trust the people. The rugby games that were seen live by many thousands of fans did not cause any spike in cases. An example of trusting the people. The country cannot afford to be locked down every time there are a few cases, either financially or health-wise. Let us get back to as normal as possible and stop this fear-mongering now. Thanks for listening, and if you would like to subscribe, just push the relevant buttons.